So hi everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, which is Beauty Devices. Is your marketing tooled up? Which is my very clever title to think about marketing and advertising claims for things like beauty and skincare, facial tools and devices, which are becoming more and more prevalent on the market. And certainly sort of from COVID and things like that, which I'll go into a little bit more detail. We've seen people kind of use things that maybe would have been used by professional kind of aestheticians or by people that are therapists, beauty therapists, and using them at home as well. So today's webinar is being recorded. Just get my speech together before I start today. Today's session is being recorded, and I'll be sending out the webinar recording at the end alongside my contact information. There's also going to be a Q&A, which will happen towards the end of the webinar. So if you've got any questions as we make our way through, feel free to put them in the Q&A box or to put them in the chat if you want to share it with other people as well. And I'll be happy to answer those towards the end. So just to go through what we're looking at today. So the agenda, we'll look at a little overview of the industry, just some market research and some article excerpts I found, which basically lets you know why we're talking about it. Why is it prevalent? Why is it growing? Then I'll be looking at some consumer insights. There's some market research we've conducted ourselves about beauty tools, so I can share the insights there. Be looking at the regulations for advertising, because obviously as much as we want to say amazing things about our products, we need to make sure we're doing it in a compliant manner, especially in the markets that we're selling our products. So we'll be looking at some claim substantiation methods as well, and I'll be sharing a case study of that. So obviously we can make sure that our claims do have substance behind the beauty tools we're selling. So for those of you who don't know me, I am the Regulatory Director at Ayton Global Research. So I specialise in things like advertising regulation, anything that impacts product testing or claim substantiation or any kind of consumer research. That is the regulations that I'm interested in to make sure that our clients can use our evidence for their claims and for their product development and be really confident that it's going to be compliant where they're selling their products. So you can always feel free to reach out to me if you want to discuss a project at all. So the skincare tools market. So I focus very much on skincare for this example, because that's mainly where I'm going with today's content. There are obviously, if you think about beauty tools, that can encompass things like hair care tools as well. I've done a webinar about that, so if you want to find out more about hair care and stuff like that, I can send that over to you. Just give me a message at the end of the webinar. But I really wanted to focus on things like skincare claims and what that looks like, so we can look at that as a kind of case study for today's webinar. But obviously it will apply to a lot of different beauty tools as well, a lot of the content I'll talk about. So don't worry if skincare is not going to be your thing. I think it will still be really applicable. But the skincare tools market with skincare devices was valued at 10 million, just under 10 million in 2019, and it's expected to grow to nearly 30 million. So it's nearly going to triple what the current kind of market is for skincare devices in 10 years. So it's really worth sort of jumping on the bandwagon, because it's really the way the beauty and skincare industry is going to go. People want the technology as well. And the reason it's growing is it says it's appearance consciousness is growing. People are more cautious about having, the more perfect skin and everything like that. Things that can only really be achieved by using tools and devices and not necessarily by cosmetic products. And obviously there's a surging awareness of skincare devices as well. So the more brands that are doing it, the more everyone else is kind of catching on, the consumers want it. There's also, I find quite interesting, because obviously we're looking at the skincare market as a whole, rising prevalence of skin diseases, a growing geriatric population, and higher incidence of hormonal disorders. So there are certain reasons why people are using the products that aren't necessarily just for cosmetic appearance, obviously, that are looking at certain skin conditions maybe that are very useful to use these kind of devices for. Also rising disposable income, of course. They've got quite a higher price point than maybe, like I said, a face cream or something like that. And you would usually have it as well as. So people need more money to spend on these kinds of devices to be able to use them. Mintel also did a bit of research about the beauty kind of devices, grooming devices and tools. And they said, as I mentioned earlier, that it was really boosted by COVID-19. So it was rising anyway for the other reasons, but it was really boosted by COVID-19 because, you know, if you were used to getting microdermabrasion, then dermaplaning, all these kinds of treatments, and you were used to getting that done in a salon, couldn't be done anymore. So we saw a real I personally saw it as well, a huge boost in adverts for these kinds of products, and a huge boost in sales on that side as well. So yeah, there's sort of ties to well-being as well, which really helps drive the kind of the market towards it. It's also really innovative, so people like to use the kind of innovative products there, and also there's kind of a tie, so the tie there, sorry, and then also consumers getting more price conscious. So it's saying there's a rising kind of increase in disposable income, which is helping drive it. Where there's so many brands now doing it, people are going to look at what is more cheap, essentially, for them to buy. What has the best effects for the lowest price. And how do we do that? We really need to have advertising claims to show that our products can achieve the results they want and that there's substance behind them and that we're showing that off. Otherwise, they'll use another product. And even if yours is more expensive, you need to show why it's really effective and why it's worth their money. So as we know, it's growing. And as that kind of research that I've taken examples for is very much kind of looking at things like sales and stuff like that, what's actually happening. What I want to do is, what I wanted to do is find a little bit more about what actually is happening in terms of what the consumer is saying directly of those ones that are purchasing those products. What are their opinions about why they purchase them, what they want from those products on a more kind of qualitative level, but also still a larger study. So I asked 215 people that we have on our system about that regularly use beauty tools and devices, some questions about their usage habits and brand preferences and everything like that. So of those 215 people, we had a mainly female panel. I kept it open. I just wanted to say, we just use beauty tools and devices and see who joined the panel. So we had over 80%, nearly 90% female and sort of just over 10% as male there. And in terms of the age as well, again, I kept it open, but it's good to see what that kind of spread looks like. And the main age bracket we were looking at is kind of 30 to 39, so millennials, and kind of going into Gen Z as well. What kind of questions do we want to ask? So the first thing I wanted to know is, you use beauty tools and devices, but what are you actually currently using? What kind of things are people using a lot of? So this was our kind of top answers. The main sort of top ones we had was facial roller. If anyone is familiar, they are really popular. You see like Jade Quartz or Gua Sha, these kind of rollers that you can put in the fridge or just use normally and kind of help cool down the skin and has sort of lots of different benefits there as well. So it's really common. It's a really common tool for people to use. Lots of people using a facial steamer, and again, I think that really that's shown to be driven from that that COVID sort of self-care thing, and people were doing it anyway. But I'm sure there's a bigger rise there because, again, if you get things like microdermabrasion or you want a good steaming and cleansing, a facial steamer is something that you might need. Face brushes, so this is usually for a very deep cleanse, and actually I've got a case study of a face brush tool that I'll talk about a bit later. Blackhead and blemish removers, microdermabrasion, facial toning, and then kind of the smaller groups but still up on the top, sort of over 10% of people, is the gua sha stone, dermaplaning, and LED light therapy as well. So this kind of gives us an idea of what kind of devices, when we ask them questions later on down the road, what kind of devices are they referring to? So what do people actually use the devices for? So we kind of had this as an open question, and we did a bit of a sentiment analysis to see what trends were getting pulled out from what people were saying about them. So we had people saying they wanted to maintain youth, firm and tone, clear the skin, have healthy skin radiance, and a deep clean. So of everything that kind of comments people were saying, this was the main things that we felt were trending, that people were really wanting to see there. So it's really about having very clean, healthy, young looking skin. So lots of things that we really see from cosmetics is what people really want to get from their facial tools and devices. So it's quite, again, this is interesting. We know what they want to see from these products, and it's really important that they see them. So how do we communicate these things to our consumer? So we say, we want to say, okay, we know they want healthy skin, we know they want radiant skin, all of this kind of stuff. They want to have young looking skin. That's what we're going to make our product to do. How do we then communicate this to our consumer? Well, anything you communicate is an advertising claim. So again, you probably know all of this, but it's important, I think, for everyone to be on the same page and know where I'm coming from when I'm talking about advertising claims. So an advertising claim is anything that's used to market your product that's in the public domain, whether that's on pack, on your website, social media, TV, wherever. That is an advertising claim about your product, because you're saying about what the effects of your product are and the benefits. So they should help your consumers choose your product. So they should be able to very easily go, okay, I want younger looking, healthy skin. Well, this product says it does it, that I'm going to purchase that product. So it's really, that's as quite straightforward as it is. So as well as saying what your product can do, because that's really important, you do need to use your advertising claims to stand out, because as I say, there's a lot of products coming on the market, lots of facial tools and devices that are all going to be saying the same thing. So what can you say about it that your competition isn't necessarily saying? And what kind of research can you get to substantiate that as well? So it really needs to help you stand out and make you look better than your competition as well. You can see some examples on the page there of what these advertising claims look like when they're used as well. So it's really important as well to think about how it is regulated. This is something I have to say is particularly an issue with this market. I don't see a lot of substantiation behind claims that are on facial tools and devices. There are some really good examples that I'll go through later, but I've actually had clients come to me before and say, do I need to get my claims substantiated? Because it's not a cosmetic and it's not a medical device, and I'm not making medical claims. So all these beauty claims I'm making, do I need to get them substantiated? Because they're not a cosmetic, they don't go under the cosmetic regulation, but they're a beauty claim. This is a real regulatory grey area that people can fall into. And the important thing to note, the most important thing, is that no matter what your product is, it doesn't matter what kind of category it falls under, it will still fall under the advertising code in the country that you're selling your product. So that's generally regulated by self-regulation. So every kind of country has its own regulatory advertising regulation, self-regulatory body. Oh my God. Advertising self-regulatory body who is going to have a code of conduct that you have to abide in that country, but it's your responsibility. No one's going to police your ad. No one's going to look at your advertisement and go, okay, this is the research, you need to substantiate it. You need to make sure you are responsible for your for how your adverts are being communicated to your consumer. So you need to make sure they have substance behind them and that they're abiding by all of those rules that the advertising authorities are putting out there. What happens if you don't abide by those rules? Is someone going to come knocking on your door? Is someone going to pull your products off the shelf? Potentially, but it all starts with a complaint. So I'm going to say it all starts with a complaint. There is obviously, as I said, when things happen like this, like if there's a certain trend in the industry, like if people say, okay, there's loads of gua sha tools out there and actually they're making medical claims, then there may be a kind of overhaul, I guess, of that kind of category to make sure everyone's abiding by the rules and that there's no kind of claims like that going out there that don't have substance behind them. But generally, if it isn't a kind of launched campaign like that, it'll be on a complaints basis. And it may be from your consumers who don't agree that the product is delivering what you're claiming it to deliver. Could be they've, radiant looking skin. They don't think it's doing that at all. They don't think it's doing what you said it can do. Or it could be your competitor. And that's almost more likely. And especially if you go down the route of saying things that are a bit, maybe borderline on the medical side. I'm really using this as an example because I've seen a lot of people saying about, things like helps boost blood circulation, which can help with this illness and all this kind of thing. You can't say it helps with a disease or illness because that would make it a medical product. And you have to go through a whole process of MHRA registration there. So it's not something you can just go ahead and say. So generally, that's the kind of thing your competition might pick up on and go, you can't say that because we can't say that, we're not getting registered as a medicinal product. So they'll complain about it as well. What happens if they complain? The ASA will approach you, find out, either say you can't say that, or they'll say, okay, you've said this, but what's your substantiation behind that claim? If your evidence matches up, that's fine, carry on selling. If it doesn't match up, you may have to pull all your products from the market. You may have to remove all your advertising because you can't have any advertising claims out there that are uncompliant. So it's really important, no matter what product category you are, to look at the advertising code in the country you're selling your product. So coming back to our consumer, that's what you have to do. That's what you have to really, that's what you have to do to be compliant. But why is that important to your consumer? Why is it important to have these claims and to have this evidence and everything like that? Well, we'd asked our consumers that use beauty tools and devices what their purchase drivers were. So whenever they buy a device for their skincare routine, really what stands out to them. So it's overwhelming 73% said evidence to results. So they want to see what your results are and the evidence behind them in your advertising. So going back to this slide, this is really helpful to see the percentage of people that are agreeing with a claim really shows there's some evidence behind it and you're not just saying it. So that's really coming across well. They also want to see that it's tested by real consumers. So again, not just like 20 people have, in a clinical study have agreed with it. They want to see, 100 real women that use the product have had these effects. So 57% of people are agreeing with that. Then kind of below the majority, but still really high percentages and still kind of people, really wanting these things. They want exceptional product quality. That's hardly surprising. Nobody wants cheap, nasty products, but it's still important to think you need to have really good quality there. They think referrals from friends are a good way for them to find out about products. So again, the more information you're putting out there, the more likely people are to use it, the more likely they are to refer it. People look at other customer reviews that are on your website. So that's really important, making sure you have some reviews that people can look at, and testimonials as well. So that's also something you can get from your research. You can get testimonials that can help support your advertising as well. So what kind of motivations are there behind the product? So we said about what kind of things they want in a free text. Then we wanted to find out which of these claims are going to be appealing when you purchase a product. The claims is really important, as I said. We need to make sure we're getting there, but what they actually want to see those claims to say. So things about firming the skin, boosting circulation, toning the skin, brightening complexion, deep cleansing, evening skin tone, reducing wrinkles, and stimulating collagen. So these are all claims that I've seen on the market, and I asked them what they were kind of wanting to see there. So it's really good, again, to see this is what people are really wanting to be said to them. How do we communicate that with them? Interestingly, when we asked them if they've ever noticed brands using research data on their product adverts or videos, only 10% said yes. 90% of people for this type of product do not see any research data on their products as well. So when you sort of see this kind of like people are questioning whether products actually work or not, it's hardly surprising when there's no information readily available to the consumer to let them know of these claims, what's being communicated to them that it actually does those things. Obviously not a lot. So how do we communicate it? How do we do that research? And how do we then communicate that to the consumer? Claim substantiation. So this is really where I've been talking about evidence and everything like that. What is that evidence and how do you get it? So when we're looking at products like this, consumer studies are a really, really good way to get some data behind those claims. Why is it a good way of doing it? Well, it's based on the consumer's perception of the product. So if we're saying that it's hydrating the skin, it's firming it, it's toning it, the skincare looks radiant, you look youthful, you look healthy. These are all things that consumers can perceive and assess themselves. And we can just get a nice big study of people to agree with it to really show there's some robust evidence behind these claims. So it's usually an in-home user study where we send products out to people to test at home. There's an online questionnaire and it reflects the actual conditions of the product in use. So you said people are putting it into their skincare routine. They're really using it as you're expecting them to use it, and you're really getting that valid feedback. And the thing is even if you don't just use it for your claim substantiation, it's such valuable product feedback to know how it's actually performing instead of just kind of going, oh, well, there's this article from a long time ago that says Gua Sha does this ancient thing. Well, do the consumers actually perceive that benefit? And, really boost that marketing for you to find out how it kind of is perceived by them and really get that data that you can then put in your advertising so people are confident that they're going to get those benefits from it. You can also compare products. So if you are looking at competitors and you think, we're talking about kind of quality, if you think it was the higher quality and actually it is doing more, test against them. Get that evidence to say yours is better. For some claims, you might need additional evidence. So things like stimulating collagen, boosting circulation, these are not things that we can assess from a consumer. They can't sort of say those things. So these are things you might have to have additional evidence with, and we can really help you find, get the right research behind that as well. So it's all doable, but it's just making sure you have the right message and you're communicating the right things about what your product can achieve with those consumers. So what does this look like in a case study? Because as I say, we can say how we substantiate claims, everything like that. Let's have a little look at a study, and you can really see how we've taken that from the claims to the study and then put it back into the media. So I've chosen a cleansing device regime that we conducted a few years ago. Because as I said, one of the claims people have used, one of the reasons people use these products is sometimes for a very deep cleanse. So there's a product we've used here, we've tested here, which is achieving that. So this was on behalf of a multinational, multi-level marketing company that sells beauty and personal care products. We wanted to assess the efficacy. So as I said, does the product actually work? Let's assess that. And then substantiate the marketing claims. So if it does work, we've got that claim substantiation there for the facial cleansing device. It's used in a regime with the cleanser and a moisturizer because it's going to be sold together as a kit. So there's a cleanser that you use with the tool and then a moisturizer you use afterwards. And it was important that they used it exactly like that because that's how the product's going to be sold. So the case study for the panel. So we had an all-female panel, 30 to 45 years old. So that's sweet spot actually of millennials, where I was saying millennials into Gen Z that are using these products. Regular users of cleansers and face creams because we don't want them to introduce new products they don't generally use all the time anyway. They needed to have tried a cleansing device before because we wanted them to assess it with their previous experience if they thought this was better. And really importantly, they couldn't have recently received any deep cleansing or harsh facial treatments professionally or even at home, because we want the skin to be assessed from normal conditions, but also you don't want to go cleansing too harsh again. So what was the test conditions? So they're using it every evening for 4 weeks because that's what they recommend when they sell the product, to use it every evening. The product usage directions, well, we had different heads that are used on this device. So the first thing is to use the cleanser with the brush cleansing head. And then they use the silicone exfoliating head for exfoliating. Then they do the face cream and they use the metal massage head to get that face cream into their skin. So it's kind of a 3-step regime within a 3-step regime. So really interesting to kind of see how that's assessed by those participants. It's used on the face, and we have to consider restrictions for use for any kind of product as well. So I've just taken an example of some of the restrictions for use we have for this study. So things like they can't expose their skin to the sun with intention to tan during the study, because obviously there's going to be quite deep cleansing going on, lots of removing of skin cells, dead skin cells on the skin. So if you then go tan and then cleanse and then tan and cleanse, you're going to be really affecting that very fresh new skin. Other things, we do want them to use anti-aging skincare because it's really important they're just using the skincare steps we've given them, and that they're not getting any kind of boosts of the claims from anywhere else. We want them to just be using these products so we know the claims are coming from these products. So what were the results? What did it look like? So I chose a few claims here. This comes from our report. So once we've got all the statistical analysis and everything like that, we get a lovely summary table, which just shows the number of people that have a satisfied answer, a neutral answer, or a non-satisfied answer, and the percentage of people that have a satisfied answer, a neutral or not satisfied answer for each claim that we've asked them, for each question we've asked them to agree with, essentially. And that's what we can use in our marketing. So go back to one of those first slides where we had 100% of people agree. This is the kind of place that you'll get that from. So we had 71 people that answered the questionnaire on this. And a few of the claims that we had, so I chose a few questions here that are going to talk about the different cleansing head, the different heads, of the device and the device overall. So 92% of people agree the brush effectively removes makeup, excess oil and other impurities. 90% agree that the silicone exfoliating head makes their skin feel softer. And 79% believe that the metal massage head helps to boost the skin's radiance. So obviously after using it, the skin was more radiant than it was before. And overall, 82% believe that it provides an effective in-home spa treatment. So that's so important after what we've mentioned about COVID-19 and people wanting these treatments at home. If 82% believe they're getting an effective treatment like they would at a spa, That's excellent for the marketing, and people will really be encouraged to purchase this kind of product. So what was the legislation? So I talked earlier about what those codes of conducts are, so advertising regulation, what those codes are, but I didn't give any kind of specified advice of what that looks like. And I think once we've got our claim substantiation, it's interesting to think about how that actually ties back into the code. So the Advertising Standards Authority, which is the code in the UK, have said that before distributing or submitting a marketing communication for publication, marketers must hold documentary evidence to prove the claims that consumers are likely to regard as objective and that are capable of objective substantiation. The ASA may regard claims as misleading in the absence of adequate substantiation. So if there's no kind of robust, reliable evidence about people, perceiving these claims or assessing these claims, then you will not be able to use it in your marketing. It could be seen as misleading to your consumers. So we've kind of looked at that claim substantiation. How do people communicate that in their advertising? Because again, it's all very well and good to say you should be doing this, you should be doing this, but what does that look like? So we asked the consumers what brands they're currently using as well. And a huge majority of people are using Philips. And I thought that was really interesting. So I looked at what they're currently doing with skincare devices. And they have got their Visa Pure range, which they've got on their website. They've got a huge website page all about this different range with the different heads. So very similar to the product we've looked at a minute ago. It's very similar kind of thing with different heads on it. So what have they said? They said Visa Pure has been tested on over 400 women, as well as numerous specialists, and their feedback is overwhelmingly positive. So they said that they enjoy using it and that the claims are really good. So 88% of them said their skin was softer, 87% said they had radiant skin, 89% saw better cleansing results, and 81% saw they had a more even skin tone. So these are all claims we saw on that list that consumers really want to see. And we've got that evidence behind it here, and we're really putting that into the advertising. Some other kind of things they have on there are some clinical evidence. They've got skin mapping, and they've got the images of how the skin tone is improving over time. They've got some other kind of clinical assessment there as well. So there's the thing about the skin, oh my goodness, the device cooling the skin within a second, and it's a temperature, clinical temperature test to really prove that as well. So there's loads of evidence about this, and it's really being boasted about on their website. So there is no surprise that they are the number kind of one brand that the consumers are wanting to use. So I'm just going to go have a little summary here, and then we'll have some questions and answers. So if you've got any questions, feel free to start typing them in. So it's essential to use advertising claims to stand out against your competition. A well-designed study and questionnaire is important for valuable data. So it's sort of, like I said, it's all very well good having this evidence and saying it, but you need to make sure that you've got really reliable evidence that's behind those claims. Don't start saying health or medicinal claims about those products. You will get into trouble unless you are going to register it as a medicinal device, which I warn you, it's incredibly expensive. So it's not usually a viable option unless you are kind of a pharmaceutical company. You need to make sure your data is compliant in the country you are selling it in. Understand the code of conduct for every country, although generally it's very similar. I don't want to kind of make you panic there, but generally you just need substantiation that's going to be reliable and robust, and you'll usually be pretty good with the different countries there. Always ask if you're unsure. That's what we're here for. We usually with clients, do a consultation based on the countries you're sending your product in, what are the claims, what is the product, and we'll design a study that will be compliant. Always present your evidence really clearly to avoid that scrutiny from your competitors or consumers, and always make sure that that evidence is recent, because if you use really old evidence, things can change over time. We want to make sure it's nice and recent for people. So over to questions. I can see a question in already, which is great. So let's have a little look. So how would you class a device LED face mask if it's not a cosmetic or a medical device? So this is an interesting thing. They're not cosmetic products. They're not medical devices. They are general products. They go into that category of general products. So because obviously a cosmetic is something that's applied to the skin or applied to the epidermis that has an effect, which it's not. And a medicinal product is something that cures or treats or prevents an illness, which it is not as well. So it's a general product. So this is where I'm saying there's kind of this gray area where people go, oh, it's a general product. There's not a lot of regulations about claims there. It still needs to be substantiated, because as I've shown with the ASA, if you're making a claim about your product that's a beauty claim, even if it's not a cosmetic, it needs to be substantiated. It needs to have substance. You can't just go ahead and say it, because the advertising authorities will be in a real issue. Will have a problem with it, and you have to withdraw your adverts. So it doesn't have a kind of category like a lot of other products do that's very strict and regulated. You see what it is. It's so super broad, but it's still really important to make sure you have that evidence behind your claims. So do we think that devices will replace the formula one day? I don't think so, actually. I think that the two work really well hand in hand, to be honest. Every facial tool and device that I've ever used has been kind of for better results used with a product. Even the kind of, I've tried the the stones on your face, and even then it's better to moisturize your face first, so it glides across the skin easier, all these types of things. So I mean, it really depends on, obviously we're talking about a really broad thing here. So I think that there's going to be there's some things that might replace it, definitely, but I still think that formulas are really going to be important as well. And I think it's just important to make sure you've got a bit of both going on. If you've got the innovation and the availability to do it, do both. Why not? And get kind of attacking the consumers from all sides of all these different types of products. It probably wasn't the best, but it's appealing to consumers rather than attacking them. But yeah, I think certainly there's going to be a space for all of it. So I've got other questions coming in now, but I will send out my contact information after this webinar. So feel free to email in if you want to ask any other questions, talk about any projects at all. And I'll just summarize for today. So we'll be sponsoring the IFSCC 2022. So make sure to come along to that next year. We'll be exhibiting there and speaking. So please do come along. Upcoming webinars. So I'm just thinking I've not got an answer there. Upcoming webinars, I've got one in a couple of weeks' time with Buzz Beauty. So that's going to be about how to deal with reformulation. We're looking at the EU ingredient ban, an example there. I'll be looking at claims and how that can be affected by formulation, and they will be looking at the commercial side. What kind of commercial impact is there to selling your product and marketing your product if there's reformulation involved? And what they've got some excellent experience. Denise and Jessica at Buzz Beauty have been working for some of the largest cosmetic companies as their marketing and sales teams for a very long time. So they've got some really good case studies that they can really share there as well. So I won't be doing webinar next week, as you can see, because I'll be at SCS Formulate. So if anybody is going and wants to have a little catch up there, please do feel free to get in touch, and it would be lovely to see you there. I've got one more question in, actually, which I'm going to answer really quickly for you, Jeff, before I go off, because otherwise you'll have to email me. So with the LED mask, if it has blue light in it, then it is a medical device, even in the UK, as it is assumed to treat acne. All LED masks are medical devices in the US, of course. That's really interesting. But the point is there, and it's obviously it needs to be registered as a medical device. So you can't kind of say it is a medical device if you haven't gone down the MHRA registration in the UK. So this is, again, it's a really good thing to bring up, because if you are saying it has anything to treat acne or anything like that, you can't say that in your advertising unless you have got it registered as a medical device. So it's super important. If you are going down that route and you're listening to this now and you're going, I'm saying that about my product, I've got an LED mask that has these medical properties and I'm saying that about it and I haven't got it registered, it's a really important thing to bring up as well. So thanks for sharing that, Jeff. I think this is a really, it's always essential to know these kinds of things, because if you're making any claims about your products that are going that way, you might not got caught out yet, but it could happen down the road. And it is really important to make sure you're compliant there as well. So there is my contact information, but I'll be sending it out with a recording shortly. And thank you all for listening today, and have a fantastic weekend.